Hi, Will from Fologram here. In this tutorial we're going to demonstrate how to model really simple button counters using Fologram for Grasshopper. So basically we're going to have two bits of geometry that will turn into buttons, a couple of arrows let's say. When you click on one arrow it's going to increment a value by some amount. If you click on the other arrow it'll decrease that value by some amount. So that's really useful for building applications where buttons can either step through different models that you want to display. It could step through different contours in a geometry because you might be doing some kind of, let's say, brick stacking exercise. It could be useful for iterating through parts in an assembly process. Really powerful but simple tool. So to start with, fire up Grasshopper and connect your headset. And in the Fologram menu, first thing we're going to do is make a couple of buttons. So drop down a couple of send mesh components, and we're going to model the geometry of our buttons in Rhino. So I'm just going to use a polygon with 3 sides, extrude that polygon up, and make it a solid, and then mirror that polygon to get my other button. So here we go, we've got our forward and back buttons. Now I'm going to reference these into Grasshopper with the geometry component. And then I'll hide my Rhino objects because I don't want to be able to select those Rhino objects on the HoloLens. I just want to be able to click on them in Grasshopper. So we can send these over. So geometry. We can give them different colors. So let's make one button red and the other button blue. And we're going to give them different names. Now for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to call these buttons 1 and -1. And this is a pretty good trick for doing counters. Of course, we could give them names, we could check whether or not, or how many times a particular name had been clicked on. There's lots and lots of different ways to build this, but if essentially all you want to do is create a counting application, you can give them names of 1 and -1, and it's nice and simple. So 1 and -1. Now we want to make sure we can actually click on these buttons, so let's set their interactive parameter to true. So that's it, there are our buttons. Should be able to see them on the HoloLens because we've sent them over. Fantastic. I'll start recording. So there they are in mixed reality. Our cursor should be able to collide with them because we've set them to be interactive. Everything's great. Now let's use the track clicks component and connect up a panel to our object name and click on the buttons and see what happens. So as we click on the red button we get 1, and we click on the blue button we get -1. Now to make sure that we're actually getting a number here and not by accident clicking on something else, I mean we can set the also track clicks that don't hit any geometry, we can set that to false to make sure that when we click on nothing it won't even update this component, which is pretty useful. But I'm still going to make sure that we get a number out of this in case, for instance, we click on something which has a name which isn't a number. Which could possibly happen if you are sending over other stuff in your definition. Okay, so we've got our number. Then I'm going to connect that up to a data recorder. And all this does is every time the track clicks component updates, click, it records the value. So when the track clicks component updates, the recorder records the current value, pops it in this list, and now we have a big list of numbers based on which button we clicked on. If we plug that into a math addition component, it'll add all those numbers together. Wow, it just happens to be 0. So if I click on the red button a few times, our value goes up. If you click on the blue button a few times, our value goes back down. So we can use this to really, really easily visualize something. So let's say I've got a mesh sphere, my favorite thing. And I'm going to contour it. Distance between the contours would be 25 or something. Okay, we've got our contours here. I use the list item component on the contours. I'll flatten those to make sure it's just a flat list. And then use the value from our counter as the item to list. Watch what happens. Hide this stuff as I click my buttons. So we're changing the contour based on the button that we're clicking on. Of course, we can mesh pipe this to send it over to the HoloLens, so we can actually see it on the headset. So now as I click my buttons, I can step through my contours. Beyond this, it's really simple Grasshopper stuff to change what you're displaying. We could use a sublist, for instance, which will show, rather than just a single item, it'll show everything up to the value that we're currently at. Okay, so then that's showing all of the previous contours as we step through. You could also use the list item with a different list of geometry, let's say lots of different models, and then use your buttons to step through them. There's limitless applications for this.